Hello aspirants, welcome to AQ by Yes YouTube channel. This session is a part of our quick revision series Prelims Atulya. So in the last session we discussed about administration under Delhi Sultanate, and in today's session we'll try to cover administration under Vijayanagara Empire, administration under Marathas, and administration under Mughals. So let's get started. So first we'll try to understand the administration aspect of Vijayanagar Empire. So under Vijayanagar Empire, the administration was highly centralized, and the king enjoyed absolute authority, be it executive matters, judicial matters, or legislative matters. So the king was the highest court of appeal, and the principle of hereditary was followed in matters of succession. An empire was divided into different administrative units: mandalavs, nadus, isthalas, and finally into gramas. So mandalams were governed by the governors, and these governors were known as nayaks. Now, the chief source of income was the land revenue, and land revenue was fixed. It was 1/6 of the produce. Here you must remember one point, that during Vijayanagar Empire, harsh punishments were given. So this is something which you can remember, that there used to be harsh punishments. Now, the top grade officers of the army were known as nayaks. So do not get confused that governors at the provincial level, they were known as nayaks. This nayak was different than the nayak under military system. So the top grade officers, they were also known as polygars and nayaks. Now these nayaks were not paid in cash. Okay, rather they were granted land in lieu of their services. Although soldiers were usually paid in cash, but top grade officers were given lands. So this is something which you need to remember. Now let's talk about the administration under Mughals. So administration under Mughals, it was more and less similar to administration under Delhi Sultanate. But gradually some changes were made, alteration was brought about, and some new institutions were also introduced. Now later on it became highly centralized, and some institutions like Jagir and Mansab system, these institutions were introduced by the Mughals. Now let's try to analyze the central administration during Mughals. So under central administration there were some important departments. Emperor himself was the supreme head of the administration, and he controlled all military and judicial powers. Now, one more important department that you must know is Wizrat. Now this Wizrat, it was also present during Delhi Sultanate. We discussed about Wizrat. But here Wizrat was slightly different than the Wizrat during Delhi Sultanate. Why? Because financial powers were taken away from Wazir during Mughals, and financial matters would be handled by Diwan-e-Kul. So he was responsible for revenue and finances. So this is something which you must remember. Now let's talk about Mir Bakshi. He looked after all matters pertaining to the military administration. In fact, he supervised Mansabdars also. We'll discuss about Mansabdar also in next slide. We'll discuss about Mansabdar also soon. Now let's talk about Sadr-us-Sadr. So during our Delhi Sultanate session, we discussed about Sadr-us-Sadr. So this Sadr-us-Sadr, it was also retained by Mughals. So Sadr-us-Sadr was the highest religious officer. So the main job of Sadr-us-Sadr was to protect the laws of Shariat. So he would handle all those religious matters. Now you must know about Muhtasibs. So these were appointed to ensure that rules of morality are being observed. Now let's talk about Muhtasibs. Now these Muhtasibs were appointed to ensure that rules of morality were observed and fair practices were performed in trade and commerce. So Muhtasibs, they were also important elements of central administration. Now you must know about Mir Saman. So Mir Saman was the officer in charge of royal karkhanas. Okay, so Mir Saman would be responsible for all kinds of purchases. So he would manage the inventory and stock and all these things. Now let's try to analyze the administration at provincial level. So this empire was divided into provinces, and provinces were headed by subedars. Now, Subedars, they were responsible for law and order, promotion of agriculture, trade and commerce, enforcement of revenue of the state. And head of the revenue department, there was a separate revenue department, and revenue department was headed by Diwan. Now, in case peasants would need any loan, in that case, they would approach the Diwan. So, Diwan would act like a bank also. So, you can remember about it. Now, let's go at the grassroots level. Let's try to examine the local administration during the Mughals. So, provinces were further divided into sarkars, and sarkars were also further divided into parganas. And the village was the smallest unit of administration. So, at the district level, or you can call it at the sarkar level, there were two important officials, Fauzdar and Amal Guzar. Now, the Fauzdar would take care of law and order problem. So Fauzdar was like an IPS officer, and he would assist in the timely collection of the revenue. And Amal Guzar would collect the revenue. So Amal Guzar was like the collector. In today's time, we see district collector. So there were two important officials, remember, Fauzdar and Amal Guzar. Now there were some other important officials too, like Kotwals, Konango, Mukaddam and Patwari. Patwari would take care of village revenue records. So these were some important officials during the Mughals. Now let's discuss about Mansab system. So this Mansabdari system, it was introduced by Akbar. And under this system, ranks were assigned to officers. So while deciding the rank, two aspects were taken into consideration. First, Jat, second, Savar. Now this Jat would determine the personal status, and Savar would determine how many horsemen an officer was supposed to maintain. So these two aspects would be taken into consideration while deciding the rank of the officer. Now every Savar had to maintain at least 2 horses. So this is what you can remember. And one more important point, and it might be a statement in the prelims exam, that Mansab rank was not hereditary. So this is something which you need to be remembering, that it wasn't a hereditary. And these appointments under Mansabdari system were made by emperor himself. Now let's talk about Jagir system. Now lands in those times were divided into two. One is Khalisa and another one Jagir. Now revenue collected from Khalisa, it would go directly to imperial treasury. And the revenue from Jagir, it would be collected by Jagirdars, and they would use that money for maintaining the army and for their own personal expenses. So this is something which you need to remember, that lands were of two types, Khalisa and Jagir. Money from Khalisa would go directly to imperial treasury, and money from Jagir would be taken by Jagirdars, and they would use that money for maintaining the army, for exercising their duties and for their own personal expenditure. Now we'll discuss the administration under the Marathas. So Shivaji, arguably he was one of the best administrators as far as the medieval history is concerned. So Shivaji, he laid the foundations of a sound system of administration. His administration was highly efficient and very well organized. So he was assisted by a council of ministers, and all these ministers were directly responsible to Shivaji. I have provided the names of these ministers. You can go through the slide in order to develop the idea, because these names might be asked in prelims. Sumanta, Sachiv, Pandit Rao, Amatya, Peshwa, he became the prime minister later. So you can remember these names. Now the revenue system of Shivaji, it was also well organized, and here you must know about Chauth and Sardesh Mukhi. Okay, so Chauth and Sardesh Mukhi, so they would collect these Chauth and Sardesh Mukhi from the neighboring territories of Mughal Empire. Here you must know, they would not collect these taxes from their own territories. Okay, so they were free from these taxes. However, they would collect these taxes from the territories they annexed. Okay, so this is something which you need to be remembering. Now, during his time, lands were classified into 3 categories: paddy fields, garden lands, and hilly tracts. Okay, now under Shivaji's administration, military system was also very well pronounced, highly organized. He was a very able administration, as I said earlier, and a daring soldier himself. So he unified the Marathas, and during his tenure, he remained a great enemy of Mughal Empire. So he maintained a very large army, very well organized, as I said, and these soldiers were given fixed salaries. So just remember these important points as far as the military system of Shivaji is concerned. So we have discussed probably all significant aspects, and you can download this PPT for so we have discussed almost all significant aspects, and you can download this PPT, and if it is possible you can create your own notes, because if you have your own notes you can revise quickly just before the exam. And if you have liked our initiative, you can subscribe our YouTube channel for more such videos. And if you have any suggestions pertaining to this series, you can mention in the comment section. And if you are liking this series, please comment in the comment section. Just share your views, share your feedback, and you can follow our social media platforms for daily current affairs content. So that's all for today's session. I'll see you in the next session soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.